Hey, mate.
Good, mate. Good to see you, Brad.
Mate, it's good to see you again. The last time I seen you was in the studio for
In
your
the other
podcast.
studio.
Yeah, and there's something you said at the end of that episode that I've thought about since and I haven't been able to forget. You said, you often make yourself busy to distract you from the things that bother you. And I've been wondering, when Mark Bouris puts his head on the pillow at night, stares up at the ceiling and the noise of your day drowns out, what is it that bothers you?
Shit, man. That's a big question. Lots. Maybe too many things. Don't bother me, but distracts my intellectual rhythm, my flow. So there are some things that piss me off, but then when I start to think about why am I pissed off about it, logic sort of drops in and says, well, that's just the way the system works. For example, governments and the stupidity of, I shouldn't maybe say that word, but how our treasurer interacts with our Reserve Bank governor. He appointed her, and the Reserve Bank is effectively an arm of the government, and they're there to direct what they call monetary policy, and the treasurer's there to direct what they call fiscal policy, and the two things are supposed to work together in order to make sure our standard of living is good. In other words, our cost of living is not rising with inflation. But right now they're working against each other. And what can happen to me, Brad, is if I'm not careful, I can get so distracted by those things that I can go down a massive rabbit hole in terms of thinking about the fictions that exist in living in a society like Australia and America and the UK and all those developed nations. And I haven't lived in China or Japan or North Korea, but I have sort of experienced most of those places in terms of living. And I can get very fucked up thinking about, why do I accept these fictions which are created by governments, which are just people who are creating these things without being responsible for the consequences. So it can really send me into an intellectual spin very, very quickly. And then I start thinking of alternative ways. First I think about how can I beat it. Then I think about how can I change it. And does that mean, Mark, you have to run for politics? And then I think about, no, I don't want to play into that fiction. I don't want to join them, because you only join them if you can't beat them. And I think, well, I can beat them. Or another way is I can just exit because I don't like it and go live somewhere else in another system. And then I start thinking about other weird things like, Musk is a good example. He's thinking about setting up something in Mars. I'll guarantee you now, if you ask Musk, do you like the system in which we live in the Western world, he would say, I hate it. That's why I spent $40 billion trying to buy Twitter, so I can actually control the narrative. And by the way, I wouldn't mind setting up a colony in Mars, because he wants to. That's an exit. You can either go with the narrative and just cop it sweet, and make money and live what people might consider to be a good life in the current narrative. In other words, you have a nice house, have a nice car, have a nice family. Everyone gets educated, goes to school, and they all graduate and get married and have kids, and they might have an Instagram page, and everybody's happy. But fuck, sometimes I think to myself, well, a lot of bullshit. Like, what's real and what's not real? So you answer me a question. Are you happy you asked me that question, mate? Because I give you the fucking weird answer, man.
Mate, I love this, because I love the depth of chat that I think we'll have today. Because I've listened to you on a bunch of podcasts. I've had the pleasure of meeting you a couple times now. And I think that we, as Aussies who know Mark Bouris and have watched you in media and TV for years, we're shown this figure that is Mark Bouris, the businessman, the entrepreneur.
It's a fiction.
Successful.
But by the way, when I say fiction, I'm not saying it's untrue, but it is created, mate.
It's a character.
It's a character, and we all live characters of ourselves. And I just want to be clear. When I say fiction, I don't want people to think I'm making bullshit. It's not bullshit. But the whole thing is bullshit. What I'm saying is the whole system is bullshit. So we're all part of bullshit. And the question is, how do you pull back from that, or where do you, or should we just play the game and keep pushing ourselves until the day we're in the grave?
So this is really relevant. So on the way up, one of my best mates who was behind the camera today, Joey, and I were having a conversation, and I was telling him about, I'm sure you've heard of Chris Williamson, incredible podcaster. He often talks about being at a Jordan Peterson live event, and this gentleman in the crowd stands up and says, he asked Jordan a question. He says, the depth of my consciousness causes me to suffer. Is this a positive or a negative? And I hear you say that there, and I say that most people don't have the depth of consciousness to recognize the bullshit that is the system because they're stuck in it. They're in the day-to-day of trying to earn enough to get by. They're in the day-to-day of, well, work starts at 9, I've got to get the kids ready for school, I've got to drop them off, I've got to get into the office, and I don't have enough time to actually stop and think about the life that I'm living. And I'm a huge believer in the power of living a life by design. I'm trying to do that in my own life. I'm trying to walk the talk and actually craft a life that for me feels fulfilling and feels like I'm not stuck in the cycle of the bullshit. So when you're experiencing this and you're having that depth of consciousness, is it a frustration because you're trying to craft your life the way you want it to be, or because you feel like there's so many people who are unaware of what's happening? You're trying to bring that awareness to society, and you're trying to help the people who feel like maybe they need to be led in the right direction.
Yeah, they're both good questions. Sometimes it's me trying to selfishly craft my world in a way that I feel is complete and not be part of the stupid world, what I consider to be intellectually stupid world. But other times I feel as though I've got to try and change everyone else's mind. I feel like I've got to influence them. No, I don't mean in a bad way, but I mean I've got to share with them what I know, what I'm thinking about. But at the same time, I don't want to. I wouldn't hate to create some sort of anarchy. Like, what I mean by that is I don't want to dislodge people's thought processes, because most people think the way the narrative is okay, and therefore they feel quite stable. You know, given where you've come from where you've started, and where you are today, you had to really create something for yourself, because otherwise you could have become one of those people who feels like a victim all their life and have a shit go. I've never had that, so mine's yours about survivability and doing a really good job at it, and having a crack. Whereas mine, have the luxury of not having anything wrong with me, and therefore I'm a little bit more spoilt by the system, and I feel as though maybe it's guilt. I feel a bit guilty, maybe Catholic guilt or something like that I feel as though I got it all too easy, and therefore I should be thinking about this sort of stuff, and therefore I should be changing things. I mean, I set up a business called Wizard. People think, oh, Bouris, made all this money. He set up this, he was a disruptor, and he set up this thing called Wizard Home Loans, and he took on the banks. Well, no, actually, I didn't just take the banks on. I'll tell you really the reason. I thought there was something going on that was wrong. The banking system. I didn't go on Wizard to take on the banks and make a lot of money. I went into Wizard because I thought the system was fucking wrong. That people were being judged because of, they might not have been 100%. They might not have been physically well. And the bank might have been concerned that they might not be able to pay the loan off in 5 years' time because they might get unwell. Or there might have been a female. They might have been concerned that the female's going to be pregnant and have a kid and not being able to work anymore. Or they didn't like the colour of your skin. They might have thought you're a wog and they're not going to give you any money because you're a wog, or you're from another country and you're a brown person or a black person, and maybe so they're making judgments. I set up Wizard to fight the system of judgment, not the banking system. Packer and I, Packer has this unbelievable sort of, he's a rich guy. He went to Cranbrook. No one would ever expect Packer to have these thoughts. But he actually was a proper disruptor in terms of real disruption. I don't mean in a technological sense, but want to take on systems. He took it on with OneTel. didn't work out in the end, but he took it on with OneTel. And he actually tried to sell off all those things which were compliant and part of the system, like that brought him up and sent him to Cranbrook and made his dad a billionaire, and ultimately made him a billionaire as well. But he always was prepared to take a shitty system on, and he understood why I wanted to do the Wizard business. And we actually entered into a program. He and I changed the legislation where banks used to advertise a home loan at 4%, but in actual fact it cost you 6%. It was like false advertising. We got the legislation changed. We absolutely believed in not disrupting the banks, but disrupting the system and creating fairness. Now, I get really frustrated because today I don't do that. I don't live that life anymore. I'm actually part of the system. I don't get frustrated with myself. So that's what will keep me awake at night. Mark, you're making all this money because you've become part of the fucking system. And that's not me. And now you've hit a chord, and I'm going to think about it tonight when I go to sleep again. Because what I try to do is I try to park that and not think about it because I know I need to sleep. And now you've just fucked me up. Thanks, mate.
Yeah, mate. Sorry,
But it's okay. It's okay because they're things I should think about. Because they're the important things in life, mate. For
You're
me.
very right.
They're the important things. We've got to think about these things and maybe do something about it if we can.
I wonder for you, Mark, like you've spoken about that success there, and like I just learned something there about the motivation behind a lot of your early success, which probably on the surface registers as different because we see the picture of success and we just think it's this desire to achieve, or this striving to build something that's better than what we're currently experiencing.
It never was. I never was.
Yeah. And so where do you think the empathy comes from then?
I've always disliked authority. And that, in some respects, when I was younger, used to get me into trouble. I've always disliked authority, for authority's sake. I can see the hypocrisy of authority. That's one. I come from a family who were always battling to do their best in terms of economics. So, my dad was an immigrant, my mum and dad, like they're always just trying to get ahead. And I used to see the system wouldn't allow them to get ahead. It was sort of designed to keep them down. Now, I'm not talking, socialism and that sort of stuff. I'm not a socialist. Although I do have socialist I think everybody should be dealt with fairly. I do have that in me. But at the same time, I'm not a socialist. I believe that everyone's, built, born, educated, socialised differently. And there's certain things will rise to different levels. And we should all accept our level, whatever it is, because that's how a community works. So I'm not a socialist in that regard, whereas everybody should be on the same level. I don't believe that. So where does it come from? I have a really strong sense of fairness. I have a really strong sense of what is logical, how something should work. I don't like fiction. And what I mean by that is I don't like laws that are just created to deal with something that one part of society thinks that they don't like. Because every law is a fiction. It's created by Parliament based on what they think the social environment is. And then parliamentarians use that to create their own power base. I'm talking about governments. Not just elected officials, but unelected officials. And then they just keep building until they put themselves in a position of they've got so much power that everybody else, we're getting dealt laws and regulations and rules that just don't make any sense to us. For example, on my way to work, I goes 40 k's an hour, 50 k's an hour, 6 k's an hour, 40 k's an hour for about 2 k's, 50 k's an hour, 6 k's an hour, 60, 60, 60, 60, back to 50, back to 40, back to 50. What the fuck? These are, that's over a 14k distance because I measure it every day and I look at it and I get into a period where I start to build up a little algorithm how it all works, and I go a bit mental about it, but it doesn't matter. Who decided 40k? This is silly, but who decided 40 k's now is the right speed? Why not 41? Why not
You're
39?
right. It's a fiction.
It's a fiction.
It's been designed.
It's somebody somewhere. It's not a member of parliament who we voted for. It's somebody sitting who we didn't vote for who's made the decision based on some sort of research that, one of the big research groups has gone and done, which they've charged a big fee for, but they also create the new fiction. They say, someone did an analysis and the 40 k's an hour is the right speed in Amsterdam or Germany or 5 other places around the world, and we should adopt that. That is the model we should adopt. And by the way, here's some mathematics around the model and make sense. I can make mathematical sense of every model just by manipulating the inputs on the algorithm. So you give me the algorithm, I'll manipulate the inputs and I'll give you the outcome I want. Which is it's like when COVID came out. The modelling says that every day they got in front of us on television and told us about the modelling. And the modelling that they did was designed to scare the bejesus out of us, to make us comply with wearing a mask, to make sure that the hospital system, which they had responsibility for, was never overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. Because the hospital system was inadequate relative to this thing called COVID, which, by the way, is just a form of the flu. They've given a new name, COVID. They've manipulated the shit out of us. If you used to watch the ABC, there was a virus sitting behind a big picture of a virus. Like, no one even knew what the COVID virus is. Yeah, green thing, with tentacles on it. Right? No one even knew what it was. No one had actually seen the virus. But right at the beginning, the ABC's got a picture of it. It looks like some sort of weird octopusy type thing in different colours. Who knows?
It's one of those balls you throw for the dog.
Yeah, totally, exactly. 100%. Or you throw at the wall and sticks on the wall.
Yeah.
Remember those ones? It used to kill me. It was I resisted getting the vaccine for so long, but in the end I had to travel, and I couldn't travel so I got the AstraZeneca vaccine. I got the AstraZeneca vaccine in November, only so I could travel, and the system made me feel like I was being a conspiracist, and I'm not a conspiracy person. I am not one of those people where I believe in every fucking thing that ever comes up, but it made me feel guilty, like I was doing the wrong thing. And it also made lots of other people try and prosecute the right, like coppers. And I remember being at the airport, and these police, they recognised me, and I was, I had my vaccination thing, and it was like, maybe, I'm not joking, there was about 100 people at the whole airport. And I was at this gate, and the cops come and say, "Can we see your licence and see where you live and show us your vaccination?" I showed them all this stuff. And they're at that, and I could see they were embarrassed asking me the question. I could see that. And all of us all of us felt there was something wrong with all this. Mm. But no one did anything. We all, including me, we all went along with it. Now, you're reading, it was all bullshit. AstraZeneca never worked. People, the number of people who've been admitted to hospital between 2020 and 2022 with heart issues is nearly 50% more than 2019, 1 year earlier. And the only correlation is the vaccine.
Mm. It's so interesting because I probably fell into that group of people who didn't question the system, who at the time, like I remember 2020 was a real pivotal year in my life because I'd left my job. I was really unhealthy with my CF at the time, and I was like, I need to get my life back on track. I want to wake up and have a desire to get out of bed in the morning. I want to feel healthy and in control of my health again. And I'd started the podcast, and I was starting to lean back into this trait of mine that I had as a kid, this curiosity. And the podcast is a great place to exercise that. And I got the vaccine. I did what I was told. I was like, we should all just bloody get it and get back to life as we knew it before because we want that familiar again. And then as the years have gone on, I look back in hindsight as I'm exercising my curiosity and questioning things more frequently. And I'm going, wow, I was kind of just a sheep. I did exactly what I was told. I didn't think any different of it. I just listened to the rules. I watched the death tally add up on TV every day. I watched the news more frequently than I ever would. I started to wear the mask around.
Same.
Yeah, like we all done that thing. And now I look back in hindsight. I had a really good chat with Gary Jubilant about it a couple of months ago. When you're a part of the system, you don't often question it because it's convenient to just do what you're told and you don't stand out too much. And you see the few
you get rewarded for it.
You do. right? You do. And then now I question it. And I wonder, like, that, it sounds to me, just in this first 20 minutes we've been chatting, it sounds like your greatest strength, and I say weakness with a caveat next to it, is curiosity, because you're so curious, and it's what makes you successful and what gives you the drive that you have, and allows you to understand life better than maybe most will. But it also tortures you to a degree.
It does torture me, yeah.
Because you question these things that are a part of our daily life that most people are blissfully ignorant to.
And maybe blissfully ignorant is probably a better way to be. I'm sometimes probably a little bit too aware. I mean, I just gave you one example to answer your original question, like what will keep me awake at night. But there are a number of other things. So, I can get quite fucked up with obsessive compulsive sort of reading and research, like just simple things like someone gives me a drug, a doctor gives me a drug to resolve a symptom, but it creates other outcomes because every time you put something in your body tries to adjust. That's homeostasis of our body is like the biggest deal in the world. Like it's so good, like. Too much salt, your body gets rid of it. Too much sugar, your body sorts it out. There's all these mechanisms like to keep it at a certain level. Keep everything, your mineral content. If you don't have enough mineral content, then in your bloodstream, for example, calcium, because your brain needs calcium, it'll go and take it from your bones. It's amazing, right? And I will get caught up in something like I've been given, say, let's call it a statin, by way of an example. And that statin has certain effects on people. And then I start feeling the effects, and I think, well, hang on a minute. I need to know about this a bit better. And then I'll start reading medical journals and shit like that at 2 o'clock in the morning. Or right now the war is on between Israel and potentially Lebanon and Iran. I start reading the history of that. I don't know. I find out what's going on television, like it could be 2 o'clock in the morning. The next thing you know, I'm researching. Wow, what goes back in history? Is it what happened before 1967? What happened? And now I know why all the Lebanese came to Australia around that period, and they went to my school. They came to my school. I now know why there was a whole lot of Lebanese kids coming to my school because they were fleeing from the war. There's been a number of wars between them, but it goes back thousands of years, and I get in this massive rabbit hole to answer your question, and it's fucked. I got to do because I also know, because I'm doing Project 100, as you know, and I also know I need to get 7 hours sleep a night. Otherwise, I could get some other problem, particularly a neurodegenerative disease, because I'm not clearing out all the debris in my brain and the adenosines and all the things that you accumulate all day thinking, which. Yeah, so I get sort of torn.
It's interesting. I want to pivot for a moment. So you just mentioned Project 100. I listened to the first episode, which was a great introduction. It felt fun, and I'm excited to see what you build with that. You mentioned a book in that, 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Berkman. Yeah. I loved that book. I listened to it. And
I actually didn't read it. I listened to it. I got it on audiobooks.
Yeah, it was good on audiobook. Yeah. And I thought it was a really interesting frame of mind for a lot of us when... especially for people my age and a lot of listeners of my show who are in their 20s to mid-30s, early 40s, who are at a stage of their life where they're not considering their mortality. They're going by the day-to-day. They're relatively conscious of health because everyone wouldn't mind their six-pack being shown off on Instagram, and they're going to run clubs and they're hanging out and they're training at the gym. They're doing those things.
That's you, mate. I've seen your posts.
Yeah,
I've seen your runs and your six pack and your gym.
You're giving me more credit at the moment because the six pack it's on a comeback journey. It's not there at the moment, but
it's a 2-pack.
Yeah, exactly. It's on a good day. But when you start to think about your mortality, one of the best exercises I've ever done in my life was writing my own eulogy and considering if I had 24 hours left to live, what would be the things that I looked back on as highlights of my life as extremely valuable efforts of my energy and my time. What relationships would I have cherished? What things would I have wished I had a chance to accomplish or at least go and experience? And I think that exercise for anyone at any age of almost writing your own eulogy and then really sitting and considering what you value and how you can design your life to live according to those values, I think is really worthwhile. And Oliver talks about that in the book, extremely so through the theme of the joy of missing out. Recognizing that we have limited time to do the things that we want to do with our life. So you have to miss out on a few things, but be joyous about it because you get to sink your teeth into the things that really matter. I wonder for you, as you're going through this stage of your life, as you look back in hindsight and you start to change and evolve as a human, as we always do, what are the things now that maybe weren't so much priorities in the past that you're now starting to give your effort, your energy and your time to?
That's a good question. Well, probably the most important thing that I often forget about, because I am one of those people who you mentioned before, like get up, go to the gym, get my routine done, get to the office, do my work, go home, eat the right food, go to bed early, try to sleep, trying to get distracted, and do the same. Repeat the same. Do rinse, repeat. And to answer your question, the most recent question is the thing I try to do is I've got to keep reminding myself is to be true to myself, true to my own values. What are my values? And which means I've got to go back and start to remember what my values are. And your values change a little bit depending on your circumstances. So I've been spending a lot of time lately on reminding myself of what's most important to me in terms of my values. And I would go back to what I said before about trying to be involved in a community where everybody's treated fairly, without treating someone else unfairly. This is probably a good way to start that. So the thing that I've been doing of more recently is, Mark, what are your values? Get off the treadmill for a second and look at what your values are, and stop trying to be popular. Because Instagram and podcasts and all that shit, they keep creating reward. They keep stimulating the reward center in our brain, and we get a little dose of dopamine, a little dose of serotonin, and other things, and we feel good, and then we get hooked on that, and because we know if I do that, I get a reward. I do a good podcast and a good promo, and the boys do a good promo. I don't do it, but the guys do it all out there, and it goes up there, and we increase our numbers, and then we have a weekly review, and they give me the analytics and see that we increase our numbers, and I go, okay, and I'm not the subconscious dopamine. I'm not actually thinking, oh, hang on, Mark, what the fuck? How important is that in life in terms of your values? So I have to sort of pull myself out of that process every now and then, and I've been doing that a lot lately.
How do you do that? Is there a practice for you that allows you to come back to that?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in meditation, and I meditate. I have a break from all the stuff that is designed to stimulate me. Social media systems, protocols, are designed to own your brain. They've taken control of our brains.
They steal the attention, don't they?
We're talking about artificial intelligence. It's actually in control. Because all these things are backed by artificial intelligence. They know what I like. They know what I don't like. They feed me the same stuff all the time. That's the artificial intelligence. And people go, oh, yeah, but it'll never outperform us. Well, actually, in fact, for a large percentage of the population who use social media, it's actually controlling what we do. Because if you just go and have a look on your page, how many hours you spend on, it tells you how many hours you spend on there. That means, and if it's like 3 hours in a day, that's 1/8 of your day. That's 15% of your whole 24 hours. Then that's 15%. But hang on a minute. 8 hours of that time I slept. So it's actually waking hours. It's much bigger percentage, much larger percentage. Well, that's artificial intelligence actually controlling what we do. And now, hang on a minute. Am I going to allow that to happen? So I like to meditate. I stop thinking about everything. I stop being influenced. Then it's like turn the computer off. It's like turn the computer off and restart my computer, myself. Turning off, then I restart and think, hang on, okay. At least so I'm aware of what I'm doing post that position. I'm doing it consciously aware. It's not unconsciously manipulated.
It's interesting because I think it was Musk that said something along the lines of most people are worried about the time when we get chips inputted into our brains We already do, but we just hold them in our hand.
Correct.
Put
It's
them
the
in our
same thing. I
pocket.
don't know what the big deal is.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, it's a bit invasive. I get that part. And maybe our body will reject it, and we might have to have some anti-rejection injections or something. but yeah, right. We already got it. This thing is attached to my hand from the moment I leave the house. So I already have the chip sort of implanted in me.
Do you manage your social media?
You mean do I post, and you mean do I do
Like,
all the...
not like the posts and stuff, but like, are you on your social media observing things, scrolling, interacting with things?
It's part of my business, so I have to.
Yeah.
It's like a business practice. I need to be aware of what's going on in my business. So therefore, I need to look at everything.
I heard Guy Ritchie say once on one of my favourite episodes of podcasts ever is Guy Ritchie on Joe Rogan's podcast.
Yeah, what do you say?
And, fuck, it just goes so deep in the first 20 minutes. Like, he's talking about, he has a weird way, like, you've watched his movies.
Yeah.
I love a Guy Ritchie movie. He's my favourite director. And the way his brain works fascinates me. And he goes into this whole monologue around how the suit's been stolen from us. It's become this thing that we put on to go to the corporate job that we hate. And the suit has become a symbol of stepping in line, being a part of the order. He's like, I wear a tie and a pocket square so that I take ownership of the suit in the way that I dress it up and the way that I choose to put it on and make it look. And he goes into this whole spiel about how people say, don't hate the player, hate the game. He's like, don't hate the game because you're in it. We all exist in the game. You got to learn to let the game work in your favour. You start to create the narratives around what you do. Yeah, that allow you to move in positive directions.
Well, Musk is a bit that way, I think, because he actually owns the game. I mean, he's gone one step further.
Yeah.
He owns the game. He bought Twitter or X. He bought it. And now he can manipulate it the way he wants. I wouldn't be surprised. I would not be surprised if Musk at some stage runs for president of the United States of America.
Well, we've seen crazier things happen.
Well, look, JFK, well, let's go back. Franklin D. Roosevelt was the radio president, had a beautiful voice, used radio to become president. JFK, John F. Kennedy, was the television president. Handsome, sort of very seductive looking guy, perfect environment, Irish Catholic, wealthy family, blah, blah. Television president. Donald Trump, the social media president. Kamala Harris will become the TikTok version of social media president if she becomes president. Musk, and I reckon he's thinking this already, Musk will be, because X is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and is used by many more people than when it was Twitter. Musk could end up becoming the marketplace president.
What do you mean by that?
Well, the guy that has created the place where we can all go and serve our opinion and or service our opinion and listen to others, which is what X is, sort of is. It's sort of free speech. It's not being manipulated like it was when it was Twitter. Musk will use that platform for everybody to vote him in. I don't mean in a physical voting sense, but to vote him in effectively, give him the confidence that he should become the president. That's what I think. I think if Trump can do it, Musk can definitely do it, but Musk won't do it until after they all have a little run. So Kamala Harris will probably more than likely, or I don't know, she might or may not win. It doesn't matter. I think he sat back and looked at what protocols have got people in to become presidents of this country, and that's one of the reasons I think he's bought Twitter.
Isn't it interesting that to some degree every political candidate is doing that? They're using they're using these polling tests to determine whether they're going to have popularity in this community. Like, when we see this, and I'm not very politically educated, but I watch enough to see.
I don't think it's about politics
work.
anymore, bro. I actually don't think it's about politics. I think it's about popularity.
Which is scary.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's about popularity, and I don't think it's about policy. I don't think it's about anything. It's about who's the most popular person, and therefore how can I use which protocol gets me the most popularity. And that's certainly in America. And what worries me, to be honest, the amount of money that politics pays is not going to attract the best people, particularly here in Australia. So someone who's not worried about the money, or why are they trying to do it? They're really interested in something else. They're interested in maybe gaming the system. I think Musk is interested in gaming the system. I don't think he's interested in winning a popularity contest. He knows he's got to win the contest. But I think he's interested in gaming the system because that's what gets him. And I quite like that too. Like, how do I game the system just to prove to everybody who's already in the system, who might be the Prime Minister, that guess what, you're a fuckwit. Basically, you haven't worked out how it all works. And that's the best way to prove to all of us who vote that we're actually going down the wrong path. I think my gut feeling is that's Musk's go. And he's way beyond Trump, way beyond Harris, way beyond all of them, Biden, whatever. He's so far ahead of them. And he doesn't give a shit either. He'd be saying, I don't care if I've got 20 kids and 22 different mothers or whatever it is. He doesn't give a shit. He's actually going to be popular irrespective of those things. Those things don't matter anymore. No one cares whether you're married and you go to the Protestant church and you're evangelical, and that stuff's all bullshit.
We live in a reality TV society.
100%. That's, mate. Look at Trump.
Yeah.
I mean, gets away with murder. Not quite, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. It's almost a caricature.
Totally. And I think that's coming here too, by the way.
It feels like we're living in a South Park episode.
Correct.
And that is...
Mind you, none of them ever watched South Park, but yes.
Well, it's brilliant if you're a comedian in today's society, and I've heard them talk about it, like, this is a fun time to be alive.
Yeah, Joe Rogan.
On stage.
That's why it's so popular.
100%, because it's so easy to make...
And they see through all the
light
bullshit.
Of what's happening.
But because a comedian sees through all the bullshit. And they can make a joke of it.
And they're, like you said before, not trying to say what's popular, but rather they're open to the idea that they're going to be unpopular with some people and some people are going to find them hilarious.
You know what's interesting? I actually don't think... I think everyone's pissed off with government. I don't think anyone trusts government. No one trusts institutions, whether it be a government or, just generally speaking, people don't trust institutions. We've got to use them. We're sucked in, all sort of stuff. But one of the reasons why something like crypto becomes really popular is because that's an anti-system currency. What's happening now is the system can see it. Canberra can see it in Australia, and they're doing their very best to make sure they don't lose power and be challenged by those things. Because just allowing current cryptocurrencies to sort of be part of our payment system here, it doesn't. It's got nothing to do with bank failures or anything. It actually undermines the power system.
Yeah.
And therefore, the power system employs people, and therefore the power system will make sure that those things are not allowed into Australia, or if they're allowed in Australia, they're going to be only in sort of minute, just enough to stop you from complaining. And we could go down like a million rabbit holes, because you can see now why I wake up at night.
I can see, yeah, because we've covered some ground already.
Well, I can wait. If I've had 4 hours sleep, I'll wake up and I'll feel pretty refreshed. Like anyone, you have a 4-hour nap, you'll feel pretty refreshed after. I haven't had enough sleep, but I'll feel pretty refreshed. I've got to be very careful. So I've got processes now. I know the number of steps, for example. So once I get out of bed, I say, okay, I wake up, it's 2 a.m. I'll go to the toilet, I go and take a pee, right? What I do is little games. I count the number of steps it's going to take me to work. On this one occasion, it's all dark and everything, so I'm sort of effectively walking with my eyes closed. I try to walk without opening my eyes, so I know it's 3 steps that way, 12 steps that way, blah, blah, to the toilet, and then I back to count the steps. So I try to play little games with myself to distract myself from getting into those deep thoughts. And
wow, so you're almost trying to stay in a sleep state.
I'm trying to trick myself
yeah.
in the sleep state just by counting, because I know counting is a good meditative process. So I count, so I know exactly the number of steps, but also the number of steps depends on how big a step you take. And so sometimes I play a little game with myself, change the step cadence or step distance, and what that does is that distracts me enough to allow me to get back to my bed and just go back to sleep. Where it fucks me up is when I'm traveling and I'm staying in a hotel somewhere and I wake up in the middle of the night, I forget where I am. And then I can't find the fucking toilet.
I tell you what, throughout
Or the
project,
light.
through the Project 100 experience, there's going to be some scientists that have fucking fun studying your
Oh,
brain.
mate,
Let me tell you.
don't worry. I got actually one of the episodes is a neurologist guy his name's Matt Kiernan. He's the CEO of a thing called Neura, which is a joint venture between the University of New South Wales Department of Medicine or Faculty of Medicine and the Prince of Wales Hospital. And it's a huge, massive facility, and they're experts in dementia and all sorts of things. He actually was one of the first people I met when my mother was diagnosed with motor neuron disease many years ago. And he's like a genius, this guy. And he's agreed to come on the podcast on neurodegenerative diseases. And I'm going through a whole lot of tests with him at the moment. So I'm going to become the most measured man in Australia when it comes to, bloods and this and that. I thought about setting up a business called Quantified, like where I've quantified everything in my body, like brain, heart, liver, lungs, fucking everything, bloods, height, weight, fat, muscle, bone, just quantify it myself, in every aspect, and then actually look at what changes happen in a year's time, so then re-quantify every 6 months, 12 months, whatever it is. And just see the change. So look at Delta. Maybe I should call myself Delta because I'm looking for change. But I don't know, something like that. But that's what Project 100 is pretty cool. Like,
Bloody oath it is.
It was just an idea. It's turned into a fucking massive distraction for me now. Like, not that I don't need another distraction, but it has become a massive intellectual distraction for me. Every moment I've got spare in the gym. You can go there, earplugs, and fucking start to listen to Andrew Huberman. From there I go to another guy called Fodel, he's got a podcast called Everything You Need to Know About Science. It's a Australian guy actually, and I'm going to reach out to him. He's great, but even if I'm sitting in a sauna, I've got a podcast on about science or but stuff about biology and chemistry and physics of the body. But it's great, but because exhausts me too, so it allows me then to feel quite tired when I'm ready to go to sleep at night. So it's a bit of a spiral, yeah.
Mate, well, I'm excited to see it. I'm very mindful of your time. The boys are looking at us right now.
I can see the producer walking outside because I think I've got to do another podcast after this. But you may have one or two more questions. What do you got?
I've got one that I really want to ask you that I think is relevant.
I'll try to be short. Like, I'm sorry about getting into the
mate, I love
weeds.
it. I love it. I wish I could be here for 4 hours chatting to you. But I know there's a lot of people mid-20s to early 30s who listen to this show. And I wonder if I could ask you, if you were that age, Mark, if you're on the average Aussie income, what would you do to get ahead and establish yourself in the current economic climate?
You mean in terms of...
would you be buying a house? Would you be renting?
Right.
Would you be trying to maximise income, cash flow? Like, I'm just interested, if you were one of those everyday Aussies on an everyday salary in late 20s, early 30s, what would you do to get ahead?
If you're asking me in a measurement sense, like in terms of value, you won't lose money in Australia buying the right property. You just won't lose money in Australia and the great thing about it is you can get leverage it. So you put in 20% or 10%, you borrow the money from the bank. Properties in Australia will grow at a faster rate than the interest rate the bank will charge you, basically, because that's a mathematical dynamic, because we will never have enough supply to deliver to the amount of demand we have in Australia, and then that's a structural thing, and that probably won't ever get solved. Certainly won't get solved in the next 10 years. It might get solved at some other stage, won't get solved in the next 10 years. So you can get ahead in a measurement sense, in other words, how much value I have, my wealth, if you measure wealth like that, in the property market, because of the way property operates in this country. And also there are some tax laws in Australia which mean if you're an occupier or if it's your principal place of residence, there's no tax. So that's they're mathematical dynamics which allow people to get ahead. But if I just put that aside, because that's a traditional way of doing it. My view is when you're between 20 and 30, you might be someone looks around and says, look, I don't have any assets. I don't have a house. I don't even own my own car. I don't even own much furniture. I don't have anything. What you do have is your ability to work. So Brad's ability in his late 20s, 28, compared to Mark's ability at 68 is like maybe a multiple of 10. Your ability to work is much greater than mine. Now, I might know more than you, only because I've been around longer, but your ability to work. So that's your biggest asset. So it's to answer your question, recognize that I do have an asset when you're young, and my asset when I'm young is my ability to work. That's the most important asset, and it's a diminishing asset. It's depreciating. So don't fucking depreciate any faster than it ordinarily does just through time. So don't get on the piss, don't get on the drugs, don't get out, think you'll go every fucking Friday night and get smashed or stay out all night. So recognize the capacity you have and optimize that capacity in terms of return. You know, there could be education stuff you're learning about, a skill base you're trying to build, could be a business you're setting up on the side. You've got weekends. I'm saying don't waste your fucking time doing dumb stuff. Because this is your most critical period. This is your optimum period. And as I said, it depreciates. It gets worse over time. I can tell you, like, mate, my ability to work today, my ability to retain knowledge today is like half as what it was when I was half this age. Half. It's quite a deteriorating asset. And my ability to understand things, my ability to grab concepts is nowhere near as good as it used to be. So, like, you know, I could smash out hours and back then like crazy, and I didn't realize it, but I realize it now. So that's what I would say to every young person. You do have an asset. Don't try to think as though don't bash yourself up and say, I've got to get on the property market. Actually acknowledge the asset you have and try and build that asset up now. Your mental ability, which is with your physical ability. Learn something that's relevant, and relevant to me is something that sits in a rising tide. It could be about technology. Whatever the rising tides are, where are they? The rising tides in Australia are property for sure. So you might just become a real estate agent, you know, and study the real estate market and know where all the pockets are that are growing. Why are regional areas in part of Queensland and New South Wales growing at a faster rate than, say, the metro? And just become a fucking great real estate agent. You might become a buyer's agent. You don't have to become some lawyer or a neurologist or whatever. You don't have to become those sort of people. But make sure you become the best in your territory.
Great advice.
The best. And right now is the time to do it. Like young people, and you don't have to go to university because there's a Google University, right? You have access to every bit of knowledge that you need to know. It's in Google. Once upon a time it didn't exist. I had to go to university to learn that stuff and get someone to teach me. Now you can teach yourself. And I don't mean, Google this. Get into the weeds. Go into Google Scholar and ask the question of Google Scholar, or go into ChatGPT and ask it to do the research for you, and make sure that you instruct it properly. Do a little bit of research first and then instruct it properly, and then keep instructing it until you get some really deep bit of knowledge about something, whatever it is. Yeah. So the tools are there. You have the time. Particularly if you're not married, you don't have kids, mate, like the way that changes the dynamic in life is crazy. For sure. Mate, I value your time so much. The boys are seriously giving us the death stares now. Yeah, no. Thank you so much for coming on the show, mate. You're most welcome, bro. I look forward to the next time. Good to see you, bro. Cheers, mate.